episodes on BBC iPlayer.
13 people in the same family.
Tonight on The One Show, Adrian Dunbar on his return to duty.
Annabelle Croft shares how she's adding a bit of Strictly Sparkle to her latest project.
And Andrea Spendolini-Syriacs on the pressures of competing as an Olympic athlete.
What, like half man, half beast?
No, that's Centaur.
The new series of Here We Go. Press red for all episodes on BBC iPlayer.
This is BBC One Street.
BBC One
Now using 6 plus Sophie in Scotland and Laura Mills in Belfast.
At 6, President Trump ramps up the pressure on President Putin as he demands a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine by Friday. The US makes clear Russia will pay a price if it doesn't agree to a ceasefire, as India, which buys Russian oil, is hit with a big hike in tariffs.
And I'm Gary O'Donoghue in Washington, where a phone call between President Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky has just ended. The White House says secondary sanctions against Russia will still go into effect tomorrow.
Also tonight, chaos at Birmingham Airport. Dozens of flights are delayed or cancelled after a small aircraft makes an emergency landing, forcing the runway to be shut. Thousands are forced to flee in southwest France as the biggest wildfire of the year leaves at least one woman dead. And the Gorilla Girls, how mountain gorillas seem to value their female bonds much more than was previously thought.
I'm reporting
Wednesday. Children from Gaza.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. The United States has announced an extra tariff of 25% on India for anything it exports to America because it buys Russian oil. It now means the total tariff on Indian goods will be 50% when it's due to begin next month. The move comes after the US envoy Steve Witkoff held 3 hours of talks with President Putin in Russia. Donald Trump has given Moscow until Friday to agree a ceasefire with Ukraine or face further sanctions. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, reports from Moscow. President Trump has spoken to Ukraine's President Zelensky by telephone this afternoon. Our chief North America correspondent, Gary O'Donoghue, is in Washington for us. So where are we now? How confident is the White House that there could be a ceasefire by Friday? Gary O'Donoghue, thank you. Thousands of passengers flying in and out of Birmingham Airport are facing severe disruption after the runway had to be closed this afternoon. Dozens of flights have been delayed and cancelled. A small aircraft made an emergency landing and all flights were grounded. Our correspondent Kevin Reid is there, and it's still closed? Thousands have been forced to flee from villages in the southwest of France as a vast wildfire continues to burn, with the French Prime Minister describing the scene as a catastrophe on unprecedented scale. At least one woman has been killed and a number of others have been injured in Aude, close to the Spanish border, after what is now the biggest wildfire this year took hold yesterday. Almost 2,000 firefighters are trying to bring it under control. Across the EU, there have been close to 1,500 wildfires this year alone. That's over 40% more than last year. The Prime Minister says the government has stabilised the economy and says he doesn't recognise figures suggesting taxes may need to rise in the budget. An independent think tank, the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, says the Chancellor faces a £40 billion shortfall in order to meet her self-imposed borrowing rules caused by lower than expected growth and U-turns on welfare spending. Faisal, thank you. A man who was on the run and murdered a woman in Suffolk who was walking her dog in a random attack has been told he'll serve a minimum term of 25 years in prison. Anita Rose died after being attacked by Roy Barkley last year. The 56-year-old had previously been jailed for attacking another person in Essex in 2015. Laura Foster reports. The time is 6:15. Our top story this evening. President Trump ramps up the pressure on President Putin as he demands a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine by Friday. And still to come, we'll be measuring up the cost of school uniforms as rising prices prompt calls for better financial support for parents.
Reporting Scotland at 6:30 on BBC London Power. Concerns about cuts to HIV services in Scotland. The gang reunite. All around the sports teams
a tourism boost after several major events.
Silent prayers have been held in Hiroshima to mark 80 years since the United States dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city, which brought an end to the Second World War. The bombing killed around 140,000 people. Thousands more died from radiation sickness in the weeks, months and years that followed. The war had claimed the lives of 71,000 soldiers from Britain and the Commonwealth, including more than 12,000 prisoners of war who died in Japanese captivity. The BBC's Japan correspondent Shaima Khalil sent this report from Hiroshima. A week after a 5-day strike by resident doctors in England over pay ended, their union, the BMA, has agreed to re-enter talks with the government. The union says negotiations will be held over the coming weeks and no more strikes will be called during that period. Well, our health editor, Hugh Pym, is with me. What they want is a pay rise of more than 20%. What chance of these talks being a success? The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has told Sheffield Wednesday supporters not to give up amid uncertainty over the club's future. Ms Nandy confirmed the football regulator will be given retrospective powers to force clubs to sell if they get into financial difficulty. Our sports reporter, Joe Linsky, has more. Now, with the start of a new school year fast approaching, the cost of new uniforms is a looming concern for many low-income families. The Department for Education says the average back-to-school shop costs at least £300, prompting calls for better financial support for those in need. Our business reporter, Dan Whitworth, has more. Now, there's been some fascinating research carried out into mounting gorillas. It looks like the relationships built up between female gorillas are more important than previously understood, according to a study that's been carried out in Rwanda over decades. Here's our science correspondent, Victoria Gill. Time now for a look at the weather. Stav Danaos joins us. Hi.
Thanks, Sophie. Good evening to you. Today was a nice one, largely fine and settled thanks to high pressure across the south. That's it from me, Sophie.
Stav, thank you. That's it from the BBC News at 6. Clive will be here with all the latest at 10. Right now, the news continues on BBC One. It's time for the news where you are. Goodbye.
Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the families of murder victims fight for changes coming up the rules. The killers of Suzanne Elliott from the Metries are having and London's mayor is almost relatives want to be taken into account. Counters every time you win an election, it gets more difficult to become that way. And of course, it's a historic responsibility.
Dormant Department of Health is in discussion
on the programme.
Some holidays are very long, kids are medical workers extra students need compensation more than 1,000 are still without power. We speak to families about the childcare challenges the school holidays bring. Russell Martin says range-friendly still get better. Lena win over Victoria. And we speak to the FA winner Chris Richards ahead of
in need of renovation, in need of cash. An appeals launched to repair the country's
and the gang for motorcyclist Claire Irwin. He's described like this from here to Cardiff as the toughest time. Hello, I'm Rosie Miller. Welcome to Wednesday's Rise. In the number of people taking up lessons. And we'll be here to Welsh Learner of the Year, Lucy Cowley. A broken promise by the Metropolitan Police and London's Mayor as almost half of police station front counters for the families of 2 murder victims bid to save money. These frontline services are where the public can speak
the Taoiseach has joined calls for the release of
says the number of front counters will be reduced from 37 to 20, and the number that will remain open 24 hours a day during the end of the reduced to just 8. It has described the post significant count, but said that only 5% of correspond to this way, which may seem small, but perhaps around 50,000
Traditional and reforms had pledged to release one volunteers to only 24 hours a day in
She helps run this orphanage
a
historic moment in Cardiff Faith Catholic Morgan is confirmed as Wales's first female First Minister. She took over from Wales's first black leader, Paul Gooding, whose resignation followed